Well, welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And we're starting in Nigeria, because in his Democracy Day address to Nigerians, President Bola Tinubu on Thursday during a joint session of the National Assembly delivered a powerful message of reflection, gratitude and determination. Standing before federal lawmakers, he paid tributes to Nigeria's long and often painful journey from military rule to democratic governance, honoring figures like Chief MKO Abiola, Alhaja Kudirat Abiola, Pa Alfred Ruwane, Ken Saro-Wiwa, and other heroes who fought for the rights and freedoms of all Nigerians. Now, I report. In a stirring Democracy Day address, President Bola Tinubu has reaffirmed Nigeria's commitment to democratic governance at a time where democracy is backsliding in parts of West Africa. He underscored the nation's journey from military rule, honoring figures like MKO Abiola.
We must celebrate the courage of Alhaja Kudirat Abiola and Pa Alfred Ruwane, both of whom were murdered by agents of military repression. We also remember the many civil rights activists, journalists, and politicians imprisoned, exiled, tossed aside, tortured, and beaten by the military regime.
The intro of Chief Moshood Abiola campaign song captured the spirit of that day. Nigeria on the march again. Indeed, Nigeria was on the march towards democracy. But that cruel announcement turned the march for democracy into a march for justice.
The historic events of June 12, 1993, a day when Nigerians across all divides united to affirm their collective will of democratic governance. We also salute His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who himself was a frontline crusader in the Nadeco pro-democracy struggle.
He firmly rejected claims that his party, the APC, seeks to establish a one-party state.
To those who ring the alarm that the APC is intent on a one-party state, I offer you a most personal promise. While your alarm may be as a result of their panic, it rings an error. At no time in the past, nor any instance in the present, and at no future junction, shall I view the notion of one-party state as good for Nigeria.
Declaring his unwavering support for pluralism, dissent, and the right to speak freely, "Call me names," he said, "and I will still call upon democracy to defend your right to do so."
While malicious slander and libel should not go unattended, no one should bear the brunt of injustice for merely writing a bad report about me or called me names. Democracy requires a fair degree of tolerance for harsh words and stinging insults.
Tinubu announced a sweeping list of national honors to recognize individuals who played critical roles in Nigeria's struggle for democracy, justice, and civil rights. Foremost among the honorees include Kudirat Abiola, the wife of MKO Abiola. She was awarded Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic, CFR, and hailed as a heroine of the June 12 struggle. Alex Ibru, founder of the Guardian newspaper and former Minister of Internal Affairs, was posthumously awarded the Commander of the Order of the Niger, CON. Other posthumous honorees include Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, who joins his younger brother, former President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, as a GCFR holder, making them the only siblings to hold Nigeria's highest honor. Celebrated globally for his intellectual and moral resistance to dictatorship, Professor Wole Soyinka was awarded the Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, GCON, one of the highest national honors awarded to someone outside of government. Tinubu further honored Ken Saro-Wiwa and the Ogoni Nine and granted them a full pardon, acknowledging a long-denied truth, that these men were not criminals, but martyrs of justice, environmental protection, and democratic resistance. Adeswagi Sage, Arise News, Abuja.
Well, that was definitely a very energetic Democratic Day speech we saw there from the president in the National Assembly, of course, in the Green Chambers, where he was speaking to federal lawmakers, but also addressing the nation. And importantly, a motion was moved and accepted there that every June 12th will now see an address from the president in the National Assembly. So now Nigeria has its own State of the Union address of sorts there. But there are very key points that the president made there. I think one is the U-turn from his speech at the APC convention in the Villa when he said, what's wrong with a one-party state? You know, I think that is a key focus of that speech because he said there's no one-party state. He doesn't want a one-party state, and he does not believe it will be good for Nigeria. But importantly, we saw some opposition lawmakers come out of the chamber, including Honorable Adepoju, who I was able to speak with, who said that, you know, the president might be saying one thing on stage, or his body language and his, you know, his cronies are doing other things within opposition parties. He said they're looking for some sort of boogeyman for their problems and they should get their houses in order. But some opposition lawmakers have said that they believe that the president is part of the issues that they are seeing in their parties. And another important thing there is that he said, you can insult me, you can call me names, that democracy allows for you to do so. And this is important because just the day before, we saw the US, the UK, and Canada come out and say that Nigeria's Cyber Crimes Act, the High Commissions here said that Nigeria's Cyber Crimes Act and freedom of speech was infringement on freedom of speech was being used to punish Nigerian citizens, and that their inability to speak freely was hindering investments coming into the country. And so I think him giving that speech just the same day or the day after that statement came out, joint statement from multiple of our allies, I think is a good signal.
Absolutely, I think so too. But on the whole, I think that if you were looking for a bold and beautiful moment for President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I think that on Thursday was it. I think on the general note, he got it right on multiple levels. Big, bold in terms of the submissions that he made, towards June 12th, as a day to honor democracy and as a day to continue to honor the late MK Abiola. And of course, a derivative of that was the huge number of people that, he honored. There can be argument as to, does the law actually allow for anybody to be posthumously, honored, by our constitution? That's one argument. There could be argument as to, does it appear that he left out a few names, a few important names, who ought to have been on that list? But of course, we know that that's just an argument. Not one single president can finish the roll call at a go. There will also be the argument of, how could you have mixed up those who are still living, and then you listed them as dead. But of course, again,
also demoted some people who had already received higher honors.
But a swift response, correction, and apology, came. But I think that it is important to highlight the fact that this came this year, 32 years after the whole June 12 brouhaha. I'm not sure where you ladies were in.
Why did you always do that?
I'm just
why does
asking.
it matter?
And I was going to ask her this: what, given that you covered this thing, what was the experience? What did you feel? While inside, the Allied chamber, listening to the president live, and then seeing people continue to talk about June 12, June 12, June 12.
So I think for me, first of all, there are things that happen in that hallowed chamber, and I like they call it a hallowed chamber, that for me are very upsetting. There was a lot of on the mandate we shall stand, singing, and
the national anthem.
The national anthem comes in the beginning, but it's not President's birthday, it's not President's Day, it's Democracy Day. We're celebrating Nigeria, not President Bola Tinubu as an individual. He's there representing his office.
He carries the mandate at the moment. But I was just...
And also going to say, I think that is also a Nigerian thing. I
is.
think even the speech that he gave, the speech during the APC forum, it was a similar energy that we saw there, where there's a lot of, I don't know whether to call it pandering and massaging of thoughts. When he speaks, it's almost like a church. When the pastor's preaching and they say, "Preach on, sir." right on.
Yes.
You know, you get a lot of those kind of mannerisms.
Which wouldn't be unusual, you know.
But, you know,
What
like
is it
that.
right, though? Is it necessary for that environment? That's the question. I say it's a
I
Nigerian thing.
I can choose to ignore, you know, excesses like that.
Yeah.
Do you get? But then will I expect to see, you know, things like that in this part of the world? I would
Why?
say
Quick question.
so.
Why? Because we're Africans?
Because there's a connection between the sort of democracy that we practice and the sort of socio-cultural environment
So
in
because
which
we're
growing.
Africans.
I'm saying our socio-cultural.
So because we're Africans.
Well, maybe not because we're African, because we've had traditional rulers in the past,
So
and
that's
our
what I mean.
relationship to
That if you
leadership
look at our society.
it's slightly different. But
Yeah.
you know, one of the names that I was very surprised was not on the list is the former governor of Ekiti, Kaide Fayemi. Yes,
Radio Kudirat.
Radio
Given the fact
Kudirat.
that Kudirat Abiola, you know,
Was on that list.
was being
And
honored.
called a hero.
Many people would also say, excuse me, many people would also say that why wasn't Showore there, even though Showore had come out to say that, you know, you can't do that and won't accept it, like we won't take you to court. Many other people say, why won't Dele Momodu be there? When Dele Momodu, Passion Dele Momodu was 60, Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu penned a beautiful tribute about him to say that, you know, to recall when they were together in exile, when they Abacha Gun. But I think that it is important that at least he has started the process. There will be next year, you know, definitely.
Yes.
And there will be other years, you know, if he gets a second term. But what is more important for me is the fact that he is finally acknowledging the contributions of journalists, the media, you know, in the struggle for June 12. I mentioned 1993 because even me, I was just, you know, a very young reporter. We were all on the streets on that day at the Guardian.
I wish you had a picture.
At the Guardian.
We can see that.
Some of us were not born.
I wish you had a picture.
I wasn't going there.
No, it's okay.
So my point, and I saw a number of them, you know, last night, where the doyen of journalism in Nigeria, the publisher of Vanguard, Uncle Sam Amokakpemu, was being honored with a dinner. I saw a few of the, you know, honorees there. Nkeke, you know, Mr. Kade Komolafe, the ombudsman for this day and our rights group. The spokesperson for the president, Mr. Bayo Ononuga, you know, was also there. Again, you might argue about, you know, who deserves a CON, who deserves an ON, and stuff like that. But for the first time, we have a president who's saying that journalists contributed a whole lot to the democracy that we are, you know, enjoying today, and they deserve to be honored and celebrated. And next year, following year, other opportune moments, maybe things can be done, you know, far better. But then we must acknowledge what the president has done. As the one-party state, beautiful speech. If you say that it's about it's a turnaround.
It's a bit of a U-turn from the APC convention.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that even at the convention that the idea was to say that he would prefer a one-party state. I think that what the president was saying, that he wouldn't mind a dominant party, and he wouldn't mind to be the president, you know, who has emerged from a dominant party, and that in any case, if folks are not satisfied with the other parties, you know, they have every right to try and escape from a sinking ship, you know, as I put it. And why not? Like we've always said, and Kachiwu, like you know, it has happened before. You know, it's not the first time that you experience it. So let him enjoy his moment, but then let him be appraised on the quality of governance that is bringing to book. It is not about the party. It's not about how many governors are coming in. It's not about, you know, those who had abused you in the past and are now flocking into your fold. It will be about the deliverables of your promises. And I think that Nigerians are also taking note.
Absolutely. And just a few things for me. First things first is that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the president of Nigeria. And if truly and truly he does believe that, you know, he does not support a one-party state, I think it's also pertinent to also question the new arrivals as to what exactly are the issues within your party. Because I understand that he should question the motive, is what I'm saying. I think he should. Because as we've seen with a lot of the defections, the primary reason being, amongst others, to ensure proper disbursement of resources, to make sure that resources meant for their people, to make sure that the people benefit at the end of the day. The question should then be, why can they benefit under the party that you are in? I think that for me is where I would say it should also be questioned. So I do understand when you say, or rather when the Honorable says he might be saying that but his body language may be saying otherwise. Second thing is with regards to the Ogoni 9. The president's saying that he is offering a pardon.
Yeah.
Now, there are still people who believe that that case was misjudged. And there's still a lot of investigation that needs to go into that. A lot of critics have come out to say that when you say a pardon, that basically means that you're admitting to what had happened. So they're asking that, shouldn't this just be completely cancelled out to say this should have never happened? There's still a lot of investigation that still needs to go into that. The president also went into a lot of key investments that are going to be coming into Nigeria, specifically within the educational sector, youth empowerment, job creation. One of the major constraints for Nigerians with regards to inflation has been the cost of living. Perhaps some of these investments will alleviate the burden on a lot of Nigerians and maybe improve their standard of living. Nigerians have been through a lot, and it's very, very hard to trust that anybody in power will do differently from previous presidents. However, I do think that we are at a very interesting time because at the president's midterm, he's rolling out a lot of projects. This is the time where Nigerians, even if the president says, insult me all you want, insults do not bring results. Insults only further express anger, and anger is not going to solve our problems. I think this is a time where we can actually hold the president accountable for the things he has said he will do. Let's look forward to another 1 year or another 2 years to see what the president will do, and then we may have more to say on that. So all in all, it was a very, very interesting democracy speech, I would say. I quite enjoyed taking a look at it. Now, still on President Tinubu, who no doubt had quite an eventful week. This time directing that all ministries, departments, and agencies must begin to pay to use the International Conference Center in Abuja, which has now been named after him as part of efforts to ensure the long-term sustainability of public assets. At the commissioning, the president commended Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, for what he called the minister's excellent work in transforming the city's infrastructure. State House correspondent, of course, Adesuma Omoruwan, tells us some more about this.
Abuja's International Conference Center just got a facelift and a new name. It's now the Bola Ahmed Tinubu International Conference Center. If the building wasn't moving, the Minister of the FCC sure was. A proud President Tinubu says the revamp isn't just about infrastructure. It's about national image. Months ago, he says he was shocked by what he saw here.
When I attended the conference of ECOWAS Parliament here, it was a very dirty, disorganized, inhabitable environment. I turned to Wike. I said, but this conference center is not reflecting who we are. Have we sunk this low?
The original contractor from over 3 decades was brought back to deliver the transformation. One, Tinubu says, aligns with his renewed hope agenda across energy, education, and urban renewal. He also praised the FCC minister and urged him to ignore criticisms.
Don't pay attention to the busybody and the bystanders. Whatever they say, continue with your good work. You are a transformational leader. You have the foresight, the vision, and determination to succeed. Thank you very, very much.
The minister highlights some of the changes carried out.
Today, this Bola Ahmed International Conference can match any other international conference. But what I want to appeal, Mr. President, because I know pressure will come, how do we sustain this? I want to let everybody know, whether you're a ministry, whether you're an agency, you want to use this, you have to pay something. You have to pay. That's the only way it can be sustained. Nothing like my brother, my sister is going to have wedding. If you want to use a place like this, such a beautiful place, then you must do something. We have named one hall, Julian Tabas Hall. We have named Gosolababi Hall. And your vice president we have known one of the salt to a vice president. And then the CJN, we have also named one of the horse against the name of the CJN.
While the president did the reopening, Minister Wike did the dancing, and the Senate president did the praising.
The Nigerian Parliament is very proud of you. We are proud of the fact that we do the budgeting, we give the approvals, and you do the execution. But you have put on your thinking cap, and you are very determined to leave Nigeria better than you met it. It starts from here.
The center, first built in 1991 under General Babangida, is just one of several federal capital territory projects being unveiled to mark Tinubu's second year in office. Whether the upgrades can be maintained and the pay-to-use order actually enforced will be a measure of how far this administration can go in treating public assets as public investments. Adesua Omorwan, Arise News.
ICC, of course, that opening of this very, very, I would say, important venue within the FCC. I believe that's one of the most sought-after locations for events alike. But again, I think this is amazing, wonderful development from the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, putting this together, making sure it's refurbished, and also making sure that there is continued improvements on the venue with regards to people paying for its use. As to it being named after the president, I remember during the when Professor Humphrey Nwosu died, there was that conversation about naming properties after individuals, whether or not it is necessary, whether or not it should become a normal parlance within our space, a political space in Nigeria. But I think in some cases it is understandable when a location or a monument is named after someone who has contributed greatly to the improvements within Nigeria. Whether in some cases it is necessary or not is still subject to debate.
Absolutely. I think that from what we have seen from the media, it looks like it's a good job in terms of the renovation, in terms of the upgrade. I'm not sure if they really use the word upgrade, because we all know what an international conference center, ought to be looking like, particularly when it's almost close to 30 years after it was, originally built. It was the same struggle with the National Theatre in Lagos before the Bankers Committee, came to its rescue. So I get the point of why that sort of an upgrade and renovation, is necessary. When the president went there for, I believe it was the ECOWAS event, and he didn't like what he saw, and then he tasked the minister who's in charge of the FCT, to spruce it up. But then if you've got 39 billion to spruce up, an edifice like that, I'm sure that you would do a bit of breakdowns like Minister Wike was doing. Was that necessary at an occasion like that? Just, a reminiscence of what he used to do in River State.
The band has come to Abuja.
The band has come to Abuja, all song and dance. I think that it was totally unnecessary. I think that in a way, I saw that the president sort of enjoyed it, looking at it, and he appeared smitten, by it. I think that a protocol and the minders of the president should work with the minister to curtail some of the excesses because of the impression that it creates that this is all about, song and dance, particularly when it is not something that you built from the scratch yourself. As to naming it after the president, I'm not even sure who has the power to name any national monument after anybody, because it sounded at first as if it was Wike's idea. And I'm like, does the minister have the power to name a monument after anybody, even if you're naming it after the president? That can be within your purview. But then if you say that it's the president naming it after himself, after, about 5 or 6 other monuments are already named after him, maybe that would be stretching, that sort of self-aggrandizement, in my opinion. The man who conceived the idea, funded it, is still alive. If you needed to name it after anybody, maybe it would have been a better choice. If not, while he's still alive, I do not think that it is fair on General Ibrahim Babangida, not to name that place after him. I do not actually believe that it is necessary, given that you have even diluted the whole essence of it. Now going inside and saying Goswell Akpabio Hall, speaker, something, library, etc. You know, this fascination with titles and self-aggrandizement, we'll need to work on it. It is totally unnecessary. As to ministries and agencies and parastatals paying, it will have been a beautiful idea if it didn't come in the manner that Mr. Wike said it. He said it as if he was just giving an instruction, you know, to the president as to how to maintain it. If you need to maintain any infrastructure, it's a budgetary allocation. It's a budgetary matter, whether anybody patronizes it or not. And why should ministries and parastatals be the first anyway? If you have to be giving them discount, then let it go to the public who can pay for it. More so that you're trying to sell Abuja as a conference city. If it is a conference city, conferences are not necessarily about the ones that agencies and ministries of government are doing. It is something that will pull people, you know, from abroad. And when they come, what else will they see? So when the president says this was beneath us, what is also beneath us is the fact that there is no national theatre in Abuja, that there is no national library in Abuja, you know, that there is no museum, you know, in Abuja.
I think, but they are building the museum now, right?
Well, I mean,
it's part of the minister's plan.
It's beneath us that we are just struggling to get that done now, but at least let's get it done.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
that we can compete with other capital cities like ours all over the world.
Definitely, very quickly, because, you know, as you said, very importantly, that they spent 39 billion naira on this. That's over $25 million if we're using our current exchange rate. And the minister has said that, you know, those who are complaining about that amount being spent to renovate the conference center have no taste. They lack good taste. And I must say that I must be one of those who lack good taste, because I think, you know, the sign was definitely it's not aesthetically pleasing. I think a $20 million renovation should look much nicer. It looks like a school hall, and just like in a school hall, they have named it after other political leaders. When we are at this world stage, again, I always say Nigeria is not just Nigeria. We're the largest black nation in the world. That is our capital, and we really need to up our standards.
Absolutely. All right, we move on. It was quite a dreadful Thursday, and one to forget, in the Indian city of Ahmedabad in India's Gujarat state, following the crash of a London-bound Air India passenger jet in a residential area, which resulted in the death of more than 290 persons on board and on the ground. Investigators have since recovered the black box recorder of the ill-fated aircraft. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner slammed into a crowded residential area shortly after takeoff, ripping through buildings, housing hospital staff and students. Only one passenger survived, a British national of Indian origin, while victims included nationals from India, the United Kingdom, Portugal, and Canada. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the scene, calling the tragedy heartbreaking beyond words. DNA testing is underway to confirm identities, with relatives arriving to submit samples. Meanwhile, emergency teams are continuing search and rescue efforts at the site of the crash. Horrible, horrible, tragic thing. And, you know, our hearts and prayers go to the entire Indian nation, and particularly the families of those who have lost one. Clearly more than 200 of them, only one survivor. Less than 2 minutes after takeoff, you know, and it came down, you know, just like that. At a time that everybody is saying that it looks like Air India is getting it right, and, you know, number of reforms are working to position the airliner as one of the best within the Asian region. So it's really sad to have to wake up on a day like that and then see that yet another plane crash has happened. I mean, it dampens one's spirit, and you just, you know, particularly, I mean, for anybody who flies one time or the other, for me, takeoff has always been the most, you know, dreadful period if you're flying an airplane. Some other people will say, oh, it is when they are descending to land, but takeoffs freaks me out. You know, but
it does?
Absolutely.
I'm always white-knuckled. And you know, now it's like every week I'm holding on to the seat and just, just praying.
Until the seatbelt sign, you know,
it's
on,
turned off.
like, oh, you know.
You know, I never take my seatbelt off, ever. Even when the seatbelt sign is turned off.
It's actually the best approach. You know, that's what people will say.
Right?
Yeah.
I
I
just
never,
leave it.
even in a car,
I never take it off.
I don't take my seatbelt
At
off.
all. I just leave it on. I think for me, the most heartbreaking sight in all of this was when the reporter, the CNN affiliate in India, had a reporter on the site of the crash, and they showed the bags of the people who were in the plane. That and the picture of the family. The doctor, the doctor, his wife, that was relocating to London.
I mean, so
their
sad,
twin sons and their 8-year-old daughter. Looking at that picture, you could see the hope in their eyes, going to start off a new life, and then this tragedy happens. Now, with regards to the one survivor, I'm yet to get a completely coherent explanation on
nobody has gotten any, you know,
because it's just a miracle. I've heard different explanations as to how he survived. On one hand, he was able to use the exit door to get out of the plane before it crashed, but there was a reference, exactly, like a translation from what he was saying, where he said the plane, the part of his seat, 11A, that crashed, there was a place he was able to get out of the plane through, and the other people couldn't escape. I mean, I have a lot of questions. Was there somebody sitting beside him?
That would be a business class area.
11A, with 11A
11A.
that should be.
And his brother was also on the flight.
Yeah, that should be economy. I think 11A for the Air India flight. I don't think it's that big. I don't think it was that big.
It was a Dreamliner.
It was a 787, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know. I just think that was a complete miracle to start with. The fact that he was able to survive and walk out of the plane. Not only did he survive, he was walking out. That was a huge, huge miracle. But at the same time, this is still incredibly heartbreaking.
It's a story
it's
that
just
people
incredibly
would need to hear, and you know, I'm sure that he's not going to end there for the survivor. That's a story.
Oh, his life
that
has
you have
changed tremendously. He can sell his story. I imagine seeing a documentary about this very soon. Netflix just released the documentary on the Titan submersible implosion. So I imagine that a lot of studios are beginning to work their way around just telling this man's story, because it's one that a lot of people would want to hear.
His story and the young lady that missed the flight, you know,
Right.
because she got to the airport 11 minutes after the counter had been closed.
That was that.
Another miracle.